Wondering what's next in your business or personal life? Welcome to Success to Significance, Life After Breaking Through Glass Ceilings, a podcast dedicated to helping you with all of life's challenges, discoveries, and opportunities. Whether you're seeking a new career, retirement, or simply wanting to make an impact in your community or the world. Join Jen Du Plessis and her guests as they explore how to start, what to do when you're in the thick of a change or growth, and how to leave a mark in this world after breaking through your next achievement. You are moments away from the aha you've been seeking.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to this episode. I'm your host, Jen Du Plessis. I am excited and delighted to have our next guest with us this week, who is Mike Wolf. And I had this wonderful opportunity to meet Mike at a 2-day intensive that he and I were doing in San Diego for speaking from the stage. And, you know, as soon as he said he was had something to do with real estate, my ears perked up and I said, we have to talk. So let me take this opportunity to introduce him to you really quickly. He's a self-made freedom lifestyle entrepreneur, which is right up my alley. Seasoned investor and international speaker. He's been investing in real estate for almost 30 years and has been involved in several other entrepreneurial adventures. He has extensive background in business, investing in both U.S. and Canada, currently in Canada. And loves real estate, loves talking to people about real estate, but he also has a great story on how this all kind of happened, that he, jumped into real estate and how he's grown this big empire of him. And so really he loves helping people realize their dreams so that they can do what they love to do every single day. And boy, doesn't that sound just like me. So welcome, Mike, to the show. Happy to have you.
Thanks so much for having me. Good to see you.
Yeah, you too. And yeah, we're, so for those of you that are listening here, when I have one of my workshops, if we ever get out of coronavirus, which is when we're recording this, we were talking today about a disclaimer that all of us will have about how we look and we're from home, working from home. And, but Mike's going to be on stage at one of my events. So listen closely. And if you're interested in participating in one of the events, you'll be able to meet him in person. So, Mike, I'm just delighted to have you. So, one of the things that I want to start off with today is, your story. So let me just kind of rephrase this. Tell us a little bit about something interesting or something that was very challenging early on in your life that has really created who you are today.
Yeah, well, I think if we go way back to middle of grade 12 when I was in high school,
yeah,
I literally did not know what I wanted to be when I grew up. And my parents were always saying you should be a doctor, lawyer. And so by default, I thought, well, I don't like blood, so doctor's not in the cards. And so I thought I'd become a lawyer. And for anybody who knows me, they know I'm very non-argumentative and non-confrontational, so I probably made a really bad lawyer. But in any case, it looked kind of cool on TV. So I went to university to get my first degree, racked up a whole bunch of student loans, and then decided, before I go back and get my second degree, I'm going to get these things paid off. And a friend of mine, his mother was a manager at the phone company, which back then was union and government, and it paid really, really well. So got a job there, and while I was there, I bought my first principal residence, and got a call out of the blue one day from my mortgage broker saying, hey, if you want, I can get you another mortgage if you want to if you want to buy another home. And I remember thinking, why would I want another home?
And most people don't call and make that, they don't make that call. They don't say, hey, you want to create some wealth?
Yeah, I wish I got that call every day. So anyway, I didn't know the first thing about real estate investing, but I thought, I was very scientific. So I thought, well, if I'm going to buy another home, I should get it close to the one I live in, so that it's really easy for me to collect rent. So that was really my due diligence for picking my revenue.
Right.
And as luck would have it, the market, probably 2.5 years after I bought these two properties, the market took off. And all of a sudden I was sitting on like way more money than I ever thought I would see back in those days, coming, for being a starving university student.
Right.
And that was really how I launched my real estate investing career, totally by mistake. And so whenever I meet people and say, oh, they think I came out of the womb as a real estate expert. They go, they always say, well, of course you can do it, Mike, because, they just think that I was born with some natural talent, and nothing could be further from the truth. I didn't even have any interest in it until I got that first paycheck, and then I became very interested in it, and decided, hey, if I could do this by mistake, what would happen if I did it on purpose? Only problem was back then I was in my mid-20s, and my ego back in those days is like, well, of course I aced real estate investing. I'm obviously an expert at this, and so I quickly quit my job. And also told my parents. My parents were really encouraging me to continue to get my second degree before I had the first one paid off. And so I called them up and said, you're wrong. I don't need anything to fall back on. I'm a real estate investor now. And managed on the next couple of deals, I managed to lose almost all of what I made on those first couple of deals. Because back then my ego told me that I did it because I was skillful. But what I ended up learning, very humbly, is that I got really lucky with my timing and couldn't really duplicate it. And so, as I managed to lose most of that money, I took what little I had and I started to get mentors. And if it weren't for, going from being a know-it-all to a learn-it-all, I would not be here having this conversation with you right now. So that was my initial struggle to get into this industry by mistake. And it was a very good mistake, but it was, I definitely had some humbling lessons along the way.
Well, and I imagine that those lessons, and I want to talk about how you then re-entered, right? Imagine that those lessons really formed who you are, in the second go around, right? And we all have those lessons in life too, where it changes the way that we see the world and the way that we make decisions. So tell us about what you did. So give me a little bit of a timeline on this. So you started doing this, you were what, 19, 20, 21, maybe, you would finish. So maybe 23.
Yeah, it was more like 20, 23-ish, I would say. Yeah, I didn't start till after my first degree. So I probably would have been, 23, I'm thinking. Right.
And then you had this success for a couple of years, and then you kind of laid low.
I didn't even have the success for a couple of years. I just, originally when I had a conversation with my mortgage broker, how he explained it is, well, you buy a property and you put a tenant in there, and then over time your mortgage gets paid off, and in the long term, that's your retirement. And I go, That makes sense. But once I got a taste of that success and I got that paycheck, it was 2 years later, 2.5 years, let's say, when I actually, exited that property. And, I went from having this long-term approach to, I've got to be, if I want to quit my job, I got to be able to do this every 60 days. I didn't really know how I was going to do it. I just knew that I didn't want to keep working at the phone company. And I had already told my parents that, that I'm not listening to you. I'm not going back to school. And they're still pissed at me for this. But I couldn't, once I started to screw up, I couldn't go back to the phone company because I burnt that bridge. And I couldn't go back to my parents to tell them they were right. Because being in my mid-20s, it just wasn't cool to tell my parents they were right.
Because you know everything.
So, that's right. I knew everything. So I had to figure it out.
Yeah, I love that. And so then you end up getting mentors. So, that was one ceiling that you broke through, that's so important, to break through that ceiling and then learn lessons on the backside of it, and then you got a mentor and you started doing it the right way. So when you started doing it the right way, the second time around, which is now, what you're doing today, did you have a very slow, methodical approach to it now that you had that knowledge, or did you go gangbusters just like you did the first time?
Well, it was kind of a combination. And so I started to do some flips, but properly, because the first one was meant to be a buy and hold. And then I decided, I know how to do buy and hold, so of course I know how to do flips. And so I neglected to inspect the property. There were a lot of steps a lot of due diligence that I didn't do. I didn't do due diligence on the first one, and it works. Just assumed I don't really have to do anything more than that. And so, so I basically hired somebody who that's what he did. He flipped homes, and I basically said, hey, I've got a little bit of money left. What if we do a deal together? I'll put up the cash. You teach me as we go, and we'll split the paycheck. And that made all the difference. But over time, if we were to fast forward, if we were having this conversation, 15 years ago, by then I was very successful financially, but I was working my butt off. I was working, 14, 15-hour days, and I was definitely a workaholic, and I wasn't there for my daughter growing up nearly as much as I should have been and would have loved to have been. And then I started to get smarter, and I started to think, hey, now it's time to start creating passive income. And going back to what I started to do,
Right.
which was buy property, hold them, and start getting that cash flow. And so I've had a lot of different lessons along the way at different points. And I'm glad that I had them, because I think, well, they either knock you out of the business or they make you better at what you do, and also more humble. If every deal worked out, I'd probably be a really big jerk right now. So I needed some of those lessons to get knocked down. And but now I'm very empathetic. When I meet somebody whose passion is to get into real estate investing, I'm very sympathetic, and I actually will take the time to give them some tips and try to help them out, and basically show them what not to do, the things that I did wrong. Here's what not to do. So
Right. And that leads us to what you're doing now. I mean, you do have courses that you're teaching real estate investors, how to do it the right way. And, and that's really your transition from, being successful to how do I impact other people and make that a passion and utilize, what you struggled with that made you who you are today, so that other people don't struggle either. So I imagine that's something that's really important to you, is and that you don't want to see from anybody having to fight this and to have struggles.
Exactly. And I know how difficult it is, especially when you're first starting out and nobody really wants to help you. And a lot of people, they have this mindset of scarcity, and they think, oh, well, if I teach you, there's not going to be enough for me. And we're seeing that with toilet paper now.
Right. Well, and the good thing is a lot of people don't put things into action because they don't have the right tools and motivation to do it. Right. So you can teach people all the time and they won't take your business, I promise. But the other side of it is if you teach them properly, they'll have the motivation to get started, which is, really what you're all about. So let me ask you, since we're talking about this at a time when, gosh, our discussion would have been completely different 5 weeks ago, right?
Oh, no. Yes, absolutely.
And, based on when we're recording this. So I want to ask you twofold, because I first want to say, we're in coronavirus and we know that the economy is, really stumbling along, and crippled right now. And we know that the anticipation is that it will bounce back pretty quickly because it was so strong beforehand. And it's just a matter of everyone, being released from jail and we all get to go out and buy things and do things and be involved. So what is your strategy as you're waiting, in this? And the only reason why I'm asking this is because in the future, because these podcasts are evergreen, right? In the future, there's someone who's going to be in their own recession, right? Their own situation where they're looking at this and saying, okay, now what do I do and how do I prepare? So what is your strategy right now as you're cooped up? Are you deciding, hey, I can't go look at houses, so I'm not going to buy any? Are you... and what advice would you be giving to someone right now who says, look, I maybe I have to have to liquidate my 401k or my IRAs because the stock market was going down so badly. I liquidated them, and now what do I do with my money? Should I be investing in real estate? So let's take a look at that from the perspective of a not so good market, and then we'll go back to everything's great. How does that differ?
Right. Well, I think what we're going to see when we come out of this, and as you mentioned, we get released. That's a good way to put it. What we're going to see is, obviously there's going to be some people financially in trouble. There's going to be a lot of jobs lost. There's going to be a lot of people suffering. And so for myself, I'm looking at different strategies I've used in the past to try and attract some of these people that are going through tough times and come up with a win-win solution for them, so that instead of them losing their home to the bank, we can help them have a much softer landing. And maybe, as somebody who owns a fair bit of real estate myself, maybe we're purchasing their home at a discount, but in return, we're putting them into another property that's more affordable to them, or putting them in rent-to-own situations so they get back into ownership, or in some cases, maybe even loaning them money just to get them over the hump and using the home as collateral just to get them to have
a second mortgage or something.
So the last thing we want to do is take somebody who's just gone through this lockdown of coronavirus and then kicking them while they're down. That's just not what I recommend people do. So for people that are sitting at home that maybe aren't real estate investors, that maybe they don't know if they're going to have a job when they get out, but they have maybe a passion for it, I start educating myself and not necessarily throwing out offers just yet, but just getting the education and learning. Now we have we're gifted. There's a lot of gifts coming from this virus. As bad as the negative side to it is, there's also a positive side. We're gifted with, at least for me, a lot more spare time than I normally have. And so I'm actually I'm still learning. I'm building strategies for when this finishes, building teams to get ready to help with that. And so that's one side, but it's helping the people that are going to be in trouble and creating a win-win and getting paid for it. The other side I see is there's a moratorium on foreclosures, which is great because I don't think people should be losing their homes under these circumstances. So there's going to be at least a 6-month moratorium on foreclosures. So some of the strategies that I use in regular times are going to real estate auctions, like tax deed auctions, where people haven't paid their property taxes in a number of years, and also trustee auctions where they haven't paid their mortgage. And so when you have a moratorium on something, and then all of a sudden after 6 months, there's going to be a lot of excess inventory. Yeah. And so for people, once again, that are educated on how to do it properly, because if you go to these auctions, you don't know what you're doing, you will lose your money. So don't do that. But if you go and you get yourself educated during this time that you have and get ready for what's coming down the pipeline, you could want to be helping people in pre-foreclosure before they lose it. And then once a bank does have the home, if you can't help them before, there's going to be a lot of opportunities there. So for me, I am just building teams. Yeah. I'm going to probably build some courses to help people who want to go out there and help other people. And so that's kind of what I'm doing right now.
Yeah, you're sort of staging, and I use that because my husband is a drag racer, right? But it's sort of the staging. You're getting up to that light, that tree that lights up, and just inching your way. And one of the things that I'm hearing that everybody talk about, and that I've been talking about as well, is just really this is the perfect time to hone in on your soft and hard skills. Not the vacancies, but the gaps that you have in your knowledge around anything that you're trying to pursue. And I think the important thing right now is also procrastinating versus preparing, right? We can procrastinate. And if we look at, for those of you that are watching the video, if we're both at the same place now here, and someone's procrastinating, saying, well, once we're out, then I'll start doing all these things. The person who's starting to, bite at this and pull through is that much further ahead of everyone, so that at the speed, right, they already have the acceleration. So I love that you're sharing, what you could be doing right now and finding out, what specifically, and I think this is important too, and I want to talk to you about this, is what specifically in real estate. I think it's so grand to say, I'm a real estate investor, but what a lot of people don't realize is there are 1,000 ways to buy real estate. And if you focus on 1,000, you won't buy any.
No.
I promise. So what are some things that, some strategies or some thought processes around, identifying what passion you have as a real estate investor, if that's something that you want to pursue?
Yeah, well, for me, obviously right now with the opportunity that's coming down the pipeline, I never liked the term real estate investor. I really like the term problem solver. So there's going to be a whole bunch of people coming out of this with various different issues, many of them financial, obviously.
Yes.
And I think it's a really good opportunity for people who want to create win-wins. And that's all I ever teach. I never teach you to, somebody to take advantage of a little old lady who doesn't know the value of her home and leave her. You should never leave somebody in a bad spot so you can make a paycheck. So but there's lots of ways to take, like I said, these people that are, maybe they didn't lose their home yet because the government is saying, they're not paying their rent or they're not paying their mortgage and there's a moratorium, so they're not getting foreclosed on. But these people are going to come up with an awful lot of stress. Some of them will not be going back to work, unfortunately. And so for me, that's my main priority, is to come up with solutions for them, come up with marketing to attract them, not from a perspective of, hey, we buy ugly homes, more from a perspective of, hey, I can help you bail you out of your mess. Right. And so that's my main priority, but also, I've specialized in tax deeds and foreclosures for so many years. So, but I'd say for somebody who's watching this, if you don't have any of this experience, or maybe you're thinking, I'd love to get into real estate, but I don't have a lot of money. There's a lot of strategies that require very little, like something called wholesaling, for example, where you put a property under contract and you sell that contract to another investor. So there's lots of different ways, but you're absolutely right. Don't try to focus on 1,000 different things. Pick one, get really good at it, get known for it. And after you do that, then progress to the next thing.
Yeah. I think that's interesting because, my strategy has always been step investing, buy and hold, right? We just buy and hold, pay off the debt, use the cash flow to pay off the first property, then the second, then the third, as we accumulated them over the years and stuff. And, so that in any market, I could sell the house at any price, and I may have to discount it, but I don't have a mortgage, right? So it's all cash flow, right? And so step investing is something that we've done, buy and hold, and we don't buy ugly places. We only buy nice places. And then the other strategy for me is buying subject to and doing wraps and sandwich lease options and things. That's a strategy I've taken. And the only reason I throw that out is because there are so many strategies most people don't know about, and you have to have a mentor in order to make this happen. A realtor is just fine. If you're going to buy and hold and talking to your mortgage company, that's just fine. But if you're trying to accumulate many homes with less money, then you want to maybe look into some other options, other than the traditional way of buying property. So for the realtors that are listening in, and we're talking again about, you breaking through some ceilings, but we're also talking specifically about this real estate market, given the timing that we're putting this out. And so for the realtors that are, listening in, funny thing about realtors, and you and I've talked about this online, is not many realtors own a lot of property.
Right.
I don't understand that. It's the product you're selling. But if you are a realtor and you're in coronavirusville and you're saying, do I procrastinate or I start preparing? What are some of the things that you would recommend for them to start doing to become problem solvers for people that are most likely going to be calling them about putting their house on the market, if God forbid that happens to somebody?
Right. Well, they actually have a big advantage in that they already have people calling them. People are coming to them.
Yeah.
And so if they were to have both caps, if they had an investor cap and a realtor cap at the same time, they could help a lot more people and monetize it a lot better. Like, for example, if I was putting out marketing as an investor, obviously I'm looking for a good deal on the property. But if I was also a realtor, if I got to their property and they weren't willing to sell it to me at the price that made sense for me, I can say, doesn't make sense for me to buy as an investor, but you know what? I have this great marketing program. I'm a realtor and I can help you get your home sold quickly that way. And so it gives you a little bit of an advantage. But if you're a realtor and you haven't, and I used to be a realtor way, way, way back in the olden days. And what I noticed about the other realtors in my office is most of them would do the bare bones minimum education to keep their license, but they wouldn't do much more than that. Mm-hmm. And if you are willing to put in a little more effort, it can mean a lot more income for you, and you can help a lot more people. So for me, I would be taking this downtime when you're definitely not out showing homes, not in the traditional way. I would take that downtime to start educating yourself on different ways that you could potentially be an investor and help some of these people that are going to be distressed. Instead of just putting it on the MLS, there's going to be a lot of other ways that you could potentially help them and get the money.
Yeah. I mean, I just see Groundhog Day back from, the Great Recession in 2007, 8, and 9 coming about, and I was just reading or starting to read an article. They are now talking about the fact that this could have a negative impact in the real estate market. I've not had that outlook, but where do you stand on that right now? I think, as far as values going down and it being, this big debacle.
I think we're going to see obviously some corrections, not necessarily down though. Like I think I was very heavily invested back in 2006, 2007, 2008. And back then I was invested in Las Vegas, and the values of properties dropped tremendously, but I didn't have to sell. All my properties were cash flowing. And so I held on to them. And what I was finding is, the United States became a nation of renters. So a lot of people were losing their ownership in their homes, and they were turning into renters. And so that actually allowed me to raise my rents, and I had a much bigger selection of rental pool. And of course, the market's always come back. Everything is cyclical. So I would be looking at one, definitely if you have the money to buy and hold, start buying some properties, start creating passive income. But I think some of the markets like New York, I think California, that are very expensive and overpriced, they may have definitely a correction downwards. But I think there's other markets. My favorite market's Atlanta, and I think it could benefit actually from this because when people lose everything they have and they have to rebuild, they're going to look to lower their cost of living. Yeah. And when I look at the average, I sell turnkey properties. Some of the homes start in nice areas for like $70,000. Yeah. In a place like New York or California, that's not even a shed. That's not even a down payment on a shed.
That's just a doghouse in the back of the house, right? Yeah.
Right. So when you look at some of the stuff going on behind the scenes is a place like Georgia, the government's very, very business friendly. And so there's a ton of head offices there. You got Coca-Cola, Turner Broadcasting, Home Depot, Delta Airlines, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So if somebody's in New York City and they just lost their job and they're traumatized, because I mean, that's the hardest hit city right now with the coronavirus, and you're looking to lower your cost of living and get a job, I think a lot of people may end up relocating to some of the places that are less expensive, and they may actually correct upwards, where some of these markets that are heavily inflated, they may correct downwards as people leave.
Yeah, they may compress just a little bit. Yeah, and we all know that, there's a mass exodus out of New York, even pre-coronavirus. There was a mass exodus of people because of taxes and other things anyway. So, yeah, I think that's good perspective, and I think that's something that, people should consider, as they're going through. So, as we continue this conversation, I want to talk to you about the advice that you would give to someone who's thinking about making real estate their side gig and then ultimately moving into something that's full-time. And of course you did this, but you did this, as a youngster, and you probably didn't have, the 15, 20, 30-year career, with the family and all those things to be considered. And that's part of, breaking through glass ceilings, right? Is the desire to transition, but then the risk factor associated with that. So when you are working with the people that you are now, the people that are trying to learn about real estate, and some are saying, look, it's just my side gig and that's what I want. And others are saying it's my retirement. And others are saying, I want it to be my retirement, but how do I make that transition? So what kind of advice do you have for them on how to not be a real estate wannabe? Because we both know about that, where everybody takes the courses and then they don't do anything. So what advice do you have on how to make that transition actually come to fruition?
Yeah, well, I think a few things. I think a lot of people, they don't love what they're doing. And if you're not, it makes you feel sad to think that people are doing something they're not passionate about. And they go fight rush hour traffic to get to an office where they spend 8 hours a day doing something they don't love, and then they fight traffic to get home. So I think right now, this may be a wake-up call. Maybe there's an opportunity to, create the new version of you. How do you want to come out of this, after this virus is over? What do you want things to look like? And you can now's the time to reinvent yourself. And so, So one thing is, if real estate is one of your passions, or whether you want that to be, if you want it to be your big gig, real estate can be very, very profitable. There's a lot of money in it if you do it right. And I would say, don't do what I did. Don't do trial and error. Just get yourself educated, get out there. And as soon as they open those gates, those floodgates, and get out there and just start putting into practice what you've learned. I'm not really a big fan of dabbling in anything. Like, would you go to a surgeon that was dabbling in surgery? Probably not. So I don't. So I think some people, I think everybody should invest in real estate, but not everybody should be a real estate investor. And what I mean by that is, like, for example, I sell turnkey properties, and a lot of my clients are doctors, lawyers, engineers. They're people that don't want to learn the ins and outs of real estate. You just want the benefits, the tax benefits from owning real estate, the cash flow, the security. And like times like these, if you're a lawyer and your office is shut, you still can have money coming in passively from your properties. So I think that's okay. But I think somebody wants to maybe go flip a home in their spare time. You're not, when you don't have the bandwidth and you take on a whole bunch of different things, and you're a Mike of all trades, and you're trying to do, I'm going to flip a home, but I'm also going to run my business, and I'm also going to try to, it just doesn't work. And so I'd recommend, if that's what you want to do, I'm not saying quit your job right away, but put in a lot of effort, and as if that was going to be your full-time gig, and make that your full-time gig as soon as you can. So don't quit your job like I did. Don't do that because you're not going to qualify for mortgages, as I learned after I quit. But basically, don't. But I wouldn't say that you should dabble in it. I'll just do one deal a year. Either do it really, really well and get good at it, so you're making more money doing that than whatever else you're doing, or get somebody else to do it for you, like by buying turnkey, or go full speed ahead, and that's your passion. Maybe that's the new version of you that happens after this is all over.
Yeah. I love that advice. I think, part of it is it's a hobby, not a habit, right? Where it just becomes this little hobby that someone has. And if you you'd be better off suited. If it's a hobby, you might as well just put your money in the stock market. But,
Right.
Make it a business. It truly is a business. It's not a hobby. And I think that's really, really strong advice. So, again, I want to say thank you so much for all the time that you shared with us today and, just hearing the basics of it. So if someone wants to get in touch with you and they're interested in what you're offering and they want to follow you, what is the best way for everyone to do that?
Yeah, they can go to my website, which is MikeWolfMastery.com. Wolf just like the animal.
Yeah.
Or email me, info@MikeWolfMastery. You can email me. And I've also got a YouTube channel with a bunch of free videos. And just Google YouTube and Mike Wolf Mastery, and that should take you there.
Okay. All Mike Wolf Mastery. All white Mike Wolf Mastery. I love that. Yeah, no, and I just want to make sure we get the mastery in there too, so that everyone understands, when in there doing it. And I know that you have a lot of webinars, little quick webinars that people can register to go to and just kind of, put their toes in it and see if it's something that they want. So I want to encourage everyone who's listening to take the time to just go to a 2-hour, session to see what Mike has to offer, see what he's teaching, see if it resonates with you, so that you could follow in his footsteps and really be, let him handhold you on the way, because I'll tell you, it's harder to do when you're on your own than it is to, have someone show you the way. So I really thank you for that as well. So let me ask you this then. I love asking everybody about a favorite quote, a mantra that you live by, or a quote that, just resonates with you that you might be willing to share, that maybe someone will make this their affirmation as well.
Well, I think my favorite quote of all time is Henry Ford. And it's, whether you think you can or whether you think you can't, you're right. And so, if somebody would have told me, I've been doing this for 30 years. 30 years ago, if somebody would have said, oh, you'll be traveling the world, speaking on stages and teaching people. And I would have never in a million years imagined this. So, believe in yourself, get out there and take little baby steps, and you never know what that's going to lead to. There's a time where I would have been terrified to speak on a stage. And now I love speaking on stage. And I never used to like getting in front of a camera to shoot a video. Now I love doing it. So just get out of your comfort zone a little bit, believe in yourself, and that's where the magic all happens.
I think that's wonderful. Thank you. And on that note, we're going to leave this episode. And I want to say again, thank you so much, Mike, for sharing your wisdom with us. I cannot wait for you to have 45 minutes where I'm not asking you questions, but where you're actually telling people how to get these things done on one of my stages here coming up in the next year or so. And just want to say thank you again for joining us.
Thanks so much for having me. Great to see you again.
Absolutely. So everybody, just a reminder again, thank you so much for listening to our show. And I want to remind you that there is a new app out there called it's called Good Pods, GOOD Pods. And it's a great app where all podcasts are now being aggregated into one place. So instead of you going to Apple iTunes or Stitcher or Spotify, you can go to one magic place and find the iTunes that you're looking for in the interest that you're doing. So you can go in there and type real estate, and all kinds of podcasts will pop up. So I want to remind everybody to please grab that app and make sure that you find this podcast and subscribe. And give us your feedback and your comments and share it with other people in the group as well. And I know that Mike will be there. And so if you put something in there for this particular podcast, he'd probably respond to you and say, yeah, yes, no, and comment as well. So again, I just want to say thank you so much for listening, and we will catch you next time.
You've been listening to Success to Significance with Jen Du Plessis, the #1 podcast for people wanting to give more value and make an impact. Loved this episode? Be sure to subscribe right now at www.jenduplessis.com/S2S for more stories, strategies, and thoughts to help you gain significance and success. And if you like what we're doing, don't forget to give us a rating and review so we can continue to bring you the best content possible. Join us next week for another breakthrough episode. Thank you for listening.